barn, which is right, our house is on the other side of this wall, and there's this barn. You can see it's full of all kinds of agricultural equipment and all kind of old cars and all kinds of stuff like that. But this bit over here is the kind of coolest bit. Oh, here they come. Listen, you hear that? That's the swallows. They're just behind you now. They're looking. They're kind of used to people here because swallows have nested in places like this for thousands of years. The Greeks 4,000 years ago were talking about them as being the, when spring comes on, you see pots with pictures of swallows on it and people pointing at them as the symbol of spring arriving. And swallows, as well as some other birds like swifts, like house martins, like sparrows, and like starlings, like pigeons, did well when humans started making towns and buildings and cities. And swallows, like these, that come back here every year to exactly this same barn, and were probably born right in that nest there, because they make their nests out of mud and bits and pieces of moss. But swallows and those birds I just mentioned do really well in places like cities because they're like their natural habitats. Because swallows nest in nature, and their natural habitat would be in a cave. And then, in fact, some Asian species of swallows that they make bird's nest soup with is a swallow's nest. I don't think it's a very nice thing to do, collect their nests, but they make nests in caves. So a barn or an outbuilding or an agricultural building like this is like a cave. It sounds like a cave, it's damp, it's cool, it's protected from predators. And they make their nests, like you can perhaps see, made with mud, and they collect the mud from the ground, they stick up there, and the swallows have been living with people and coming back, and then they migrate to sub-Saharan Africa, so quite far down, central southern Africa in the autumn time, and you see them sometimes gathering on telegraph wires or in places all together, twittering, because they're very, here they go. You can see they're there in the pair. They're not that bothered by me because we've been around, and like I said, they live with people. The male has got a longer forked tail. There's 5 of them in here now. You can hear them chattering away. So the sound is like a happy sound, right? And it's like spring and summer. Yeah. So, in America they're called barn swallows. You can see why, they nest in barns. And these birds are all across Asia, even to America, same species, and they can fly incredible. And they're adapted to do this. They hunt low-flying big insects like big flies and things that are fast and low because they're big, like martins and swifts, which are similar. Martins are in the same family and swifts are similar but in a different family. Look at the cat. Every time I go, every time you go, just. But they're also adapted to catch insects on the wing. Look, Catkin's looking at them. They're fast. She spends quite a long time, often on this car and on another car, waiting to get them, but they're so fast. And obviously they're used. I mean, cats is a similar story, the way cats became domesticated. They haven't been domesticated, do you see it go for it? They haven't been domesticated, they think maybe only 6,000 years, maybe it was the Egyptians that domesticated them. But because they like being in kind of agricultural environments where there are mice, and where they can hang out in places like this, so it was kind of good for the cats and good for people, so they kind of started working. Dogs have been domesticated for like 16, 17,000 years, the first domesticated animal. But back to the swallows. So they fly low and they catch big, big flying insects on the wing. Look at the cat. And they chatter and they chatter and they chatter. So a swallow that's born here leaves and flies all the way back to wherever it is that it spends the winter in Africa. It knows how to get there. And the funny thing is, the parents probably leave before the babies. So the baby's in this nest. It's probably, I'm not sure, there could be eggs in there right now. The babies aren't there, because when they're there you can see them. So the babies are born. At a certain point, the parents go, okay, I'm off back to Africa. It's time to go in the end of September, something like that. And they gather in big groups, big flocks, and then they all fly off, and they're gone in a few days. You see them starting to do that, and then suddenly they're all gone. You notice it goes quiet in the autumn time. And then the babies are still here, but then they leave, and they somehow know how to get all the way there on their own. And it probably takes them a few weeks. And they probably stop on certain places on the way. And it's important to have those places where they stop on the way. And think about if you wanted to save the swallows. Swallows are becoming more endangered now. A lot of migratory birds that spend different seasons in different places are becoming more and more rare because the habitats where they breed, like these are summer visitors, these swallows. So they breed here. But then when it gets cold here and there's no insects around, they go to Africa and they spend their time there. Probably for about 7 or 8 months they're in Africa and then they come back here. And think about it. Their habitat here is having problems. We're using a lot of pesticides, there's habitat changes. There's all kinds of reasons that it's hard for a swallow and many, many migratory birds to be in, let's say, Europe, where I am now. I'm in Italy. But then when they migrate, they've got to stop off in certain places in southern Italy, and they've got to cross the whole Mediterranean. That's not easy. And then when they get to northern Africa, they've got to find places where they can feed and spend a few days and carry on going until they go wherever they're going to spend. Sub-Saharan Africa is all I ever read. So it could be, I know that they've gone as far as southern South Africa, that's right on the tip. And then they've got to have a good habitat and a good place there, and then they've got to come back. So to save migratory birds, which is many of the species that live around us and amongst us, wherever you are, whether you're in Asia or America or Europe, to save those birds, you need to save their habitat where they are in the summer, where they are in the winter, and where they pass through, which means the whole world. So, we better take care of the place, right? Here they come, they're back again. Anyway. And they make different calls, different sounds, they're very social. Yeah. Look at them. They probably don't like catkin being in here much. I wouldn't if I was a swallow. I'm going to get catkin out. Catkin. Enough of that, alright? Leave them alone. So swallows, they've lived with us for thousands of years, and they probably think they're in a cave now. No, they're not that stupid. They know they're in a barn. But they live amongst us and close to us and are part of us, part of our community. Come on, let's go. Let's leave them alone. Poor swallow. We've got swallows flying around us here. Here's the entrance to the barn behind where you are. This is where they nest. And they spend the whole of the summer around, and they're right here. They're right like, next to you. They fly right next to you, and they're so fast and so agile and so vocal and noisy and twittery and chattery as they fly around. And they're hunting, you know, and they're around here. They come steaming down just past your head. You hear them with their wings, looking for insects. They're hunting. And like I said before, higher up you get the martins, and then highest of all you get the swifts. And we've just heard this morning they were up there. The alpine swifts, which are much bigger, their wingspan's like that, and they've got a white underneath and a black head and black at the rest, as well as the common swifts. And they're all up there and they kind of scream. But I can't show you those because they're too high. But the swallows, they're going to come in. Here they come. I can see them here. There's one here. They come in, they come swooping down. And the shape of their wings and their forked tail means they've got even more precision when they're flying. Swifts, which are a similar shape but a different family. Ancient people like Greeks write about them saying they haven't got any feet. In fact, their Latin name, something podia, I can't know what it is, means without feet. But they do have feet, but they're tiny little feet. But if they go on the ground, they probably can't take off again. And swifts, which were like swallow shape, but it's convergent evolution, because they're similar shape, similar looking, but actually their ancestry is quite different. But they look similar because they do similar stuff. Their niche is different. It's similar, the way they live and the way they hunt and the way they fly. So swifts are even believed to sleep when they're flying. And a swift also, they nest in Europe and Asia, northern parts and temperate climates in the summer. You often see swift because swifts and martins are adapted in the wild to live on cliffs, like house martins. They build muddy kind of looking nests, cup-shaped, similar to the swallow one, but not inside, but outside. And they did well in cities because cities obviously have lots of buildings that are like cliffs. So house martins and crag martins, they're up there, up on the thing there. But they're adapted to live on cliffs, so they do well. But they're born in their nests, swifts. And then when they start flying, apparently, so I read, and people have researched this, they don't touch down again until they come back to nest themselves the following year. It means a whole year flying without stopping at all. That means migrating all the way to sub-Saharan Africa and back, flying, sleeping, they even mate on the wing. All they don't do on the wing is lay their eggs, because you can imagine that. But they sleep on the wing, high, and they're really high. They go, I don't know how high it is, but I see them and they're very tiny, so they're very high. And they're doing it all up there. But the house martins, you can hear them now. Sorry, the swallows, you're hearing them now. They're a big part of wherever you live right now. Probably there are swallows flying around. And if you're lucky, you might have an outhouse or a barn or a building where they're actually nesting right next to where you live.